Hey guys, how's it going? Ryan here. So today I've got a special tutorial where I'm going to show how I made my Daft Punk Doing It Right cover slash remake. I've recently been getting a lot of questions and comments about that, about how I did the synth or how I processed my vocals, etc., etc. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to open up my mix session here and show you guys what I did. So how I started out is I first had to listen to the song a lot to obviously be able to pick out the parts, because that's how I started. I didn't use any acapellas or everything was just started from just completely from scratch. So I picked everything out by ear, and this is something that I've had to work on for quite a while. You know, being able to pick out parts of songs like that. I've been doing it for a few years, and the more you do it, the easier it gets. And this isn't really a complicated song. The beat and the melodies and the rhythms are all pretty simple, so they weren't that hard to pick out. So next, I guess, is I had to figure out the BPM, and as you can see up here, it came to about 183.3, and I think it's actually faster than the original because I think my source that I was using was obviously a pirated version or something that was uploaded on YouTube. And I guess to avoid the copyright thing, the song was sped up. So anyway, that's not too big of a deal because I think that my version sounds fine at the tempo that it's at right now. So anyway, yeah. So there's a couple ways that you can pick out the BPM. One is if you have the song, or you can just wherever you get it from, you can load it into Logic itself, and you can you can go into metering and place the BPM counter, and then you let it play and it'll tell you the BPM basically, and it's pretty accurate. So that's one way. It's probably the easiest way actually. And the way that I did it is, I think at the start of the song there's this clicking track which I'll play for you guys here. So yeah, I basically, this is the percussion that starts at the start of Doing It Right, and I was listening to that on the YouTube version, and then I made it here. I just grabbed some percussion from one of my samples, or I guess my sample folders, and yeah, I just adjusted my BPM until they matched for like 16 bars or something, and then I was like, yeah, that's good enough, that works for me, and that's how I got the tempo. It's a pretty rough version of how to get the actual tempo. So anyway, yeah, so now you've got your tempo, and what I did next is I started to pick out the percussion and the drums. I didn't even want to think about the melody or recording vocals or the bass or anything. I wanted to get the drums down and have those complete. That's just my personal way of working. So let me zoom in here a bit, and I'll show you guys what I got here. So in red here we have the kick, and in orange we have the layered snares. It's actually a clap and a snare, or yeah, two claps and one sort of clap snare, and those are layered. It's a bit of a tongue twister there. And in yellow we have all of the percussion, and again it's just I did a lot of layering just to sort of get the right sound that I was going for. So let me go ahead, solo all these. I'll play them for you. I'll leave my mic soloed so I can still talk. Yeah, so like I said, I had that YouTube copy open, and all I did is I just counted out however like 4 or 16 bars or whatever it was, but I worked in sections, right? So as we can see here, this is one section here, this highlighted portion, this is the next, and that's how I worked. I built this song up section by section. So after we get past just the click here, we can see that it's going to be moving into when the beat actually comes in. So this is where it's like, doing it right, yada yada yada, right? So that comes in, and I was just trying to pick out the beat for that whole thing. So really simple. It's just you've just got the one snare hit. You've just got the one kick followed by 2 snares in between every kick, and I think there's 5 percussive hits. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. and obviously the last one has a bit longer of a tail. So yeah, just going through my samples and my folders, trying to pick out the right sounds. As you can see, we had to do a bit of layering, so we've got one hi-hat layered with, I guess, a shaker / tambourine, and then for the next hit we have a shaker tambourine and another hi-hat layered. So yeah, pretty much it was just I start to get the sounds that I was looking for, and I built up the beat, as I said, section by section. So we can see that this part plays once and then twice if we're looking at it from a section perspective, I guess. And then from there we have this other section here where the bass sort of changes, but I'll just play the percussion for now. So again, it was just, I was listening to it, I was being extremely critical of, you know, what was hitting where, and then I just built it out from there. Like I said, it's a pretty simple beat overall, and yeah, it really wasn't that hard to make. So, and there's not a whole lot of sections. We can see that this highlighted portion here is sort of like one kind of beat, and then this is another kind, and then we're back to this original one. And again, you have to be critical because certain sections will either add or drop certain parts of the beat. So we can see that when the vocals start, that the kick is dropped out for one complete cycle of the first portion of those vocals. So let me just unsolo everything and I'll let you have a listen to that.
Everybody will be dancing when we're feeling alright. Everybody will be dancing tonight, doing it right. Everybody will be dancing and we're feeling it right. Everybody will be dancing and be doing it right. Everybody will be dancing when we're feeling alright. Everybody will be dancing tonight, doing it right.
And then once you have the second pass of those first set of vocals, then then the kick is brought back in, and then the percussion was left out, I think, this time. And there's also a few stylistic choices that I made. I obviously tried to do the remake as close as possible, but for certain parts, if I felt that it needed a bit extra percussion or if I needed to drop certain things, then that was just my choice, right? So yeah, I don't really want to spend too much more time on just the percussion here. As we can see, it's just, you know, you got a section here, and I was just being extremely critical. It took me a long time to listen to the song over and over, you know, so I could build it up and say, oh, you know what, I have to go back because he actually, or I guess they, Daft Punk, actually dropped out the kick in this section. And then, yeah, so it's just a lot of listening, a lot of going over it again and again to make sure that I built up the beat as close to the original as possible, because that was my goal. So, yeah, that's I guess, it for the percussion. Let's move on to the bass, I guess. All right, so let's actually, for the bass here, I used a patch that I think was a preset in Zebra 2, and then I did some tweaking of the parameters to get it to sound exactly how I wanted it to sound. So let's just go ahead and play that with the song, and then I'll solo it afterwards.
Dancing tonight, doing it right. Everybody will be dancing and we're feeling it right. Everybody will be dancing and be doing it right. Everybody will be dancing when we're feeling alright. Everybody will be dancing tonight, doing it right. Everybody will be dancing.
Okay, mic is now on. So we've got the piano roll here. We can see just 4 simple notes, really, really simple. You can see we've got, well, you can pick them out for yourself, right? You can see or pause the video if you want to recreate this after at some point. So yeah, we've got the 4 notes, really, really simple. And there's really only two parts for the bass. You've got these 4 long drawn out notes, which go on top of the kick. And then when the percussion changes, the bass is sort of more percussive, I guess, in itself. It's not drawn out, but it's hitting every single beat. So let's just have a listen to that.
Feeling alright. Everybody will be dancing tonight, doing it right. Everybody will be dancing and we're feeling it right. Everybody will be dancing and be doing it right. Everybody will be dancing when we're feeling alright. Everybody will be dancing tonight.
Right, so that's not really difficult or anything. Like I said, it was just listening to it and I picked out the notes. I don't know if I got it perfect, but it sounded pretty close, and that's basically how I built it up from there. And one quick thing to note about the bass is that you can see that it's on a separate track, and the reason for that is because I had to change the decay time on the envelope to make it a shorter decay rather than the longer one of the previous section. So we can see, I'll let you hear it here. As opposed to the shorter one here. And all I'm doing for processing really, it was a lot wider sounding at first, so if we take this off, let's just have a listen to it. Okay, not too much of a difference actually, but what the direction mixer is doing on the bass is it's removing any of the side content. So it's making it pretty darn close to completely mono. If it was 0 here, it would be 100% mono. So I just sort of wanted a tiny bit of width, but pretty much it's mono. We've got one compressor on here, which is, let's see here. Right, so the first one, you can see there's no side chain, and this is just doing a tiny bit of compression by about 3 dB. And the other compressor after that is side chained to the kick, so that every time the kick and the bass hits, that they're not going to compete over each other. So we can see this working right here. So one compressor on the bass first to have it sounding more even, and then another compressor directly after that to duck the bass every time the kick hits, just so it's going to clean things up in your mix. And then yeah, EQ, there's like a tiny bit of boost at the low end, but it's really hardly not doing anything other than lowering off these super sub frequencies that really we can't even hear. Okay, so that's the bass, and I honestly, boy, I'm just trying to speed this tutorial along because I just didn't want it to last too long. But yeah, enough about that. Let's just move on. And what do we have? What do we have next here? Okay, so we've taken care of all the drums, the bass. Like I said, there's only 2 parts for the bass, so again, you just have to go ahead, use your ears, and see which part plays where. Right, so in this video, I probably should have mentioned this at the start actually. I'm not going to be talking about the vocoder because I covered that entirely in like a couple videos ago or something. So let me do a fancy square here, and I'll put an annotation here where you can click and go see that video and learn all about how I did the vocoder for this song and how so okay, so that's done. We've taken care of that. So next, moving on, is the synth, which comes in. So let's go ahead and skip a part to that.
Alright, everybody will be dancing tonight. Alright, everybody will be dancing tonight. If you do it right, let it.
Okay, so what I did here is you can see that I bounced this one first, and I'll tell you why I did that, I guess, if I can actually remember just a second. At first, let me unmute this portion here, which is where the MIDI lies. I'll open this up so you can have a look at it. I guess let's play it one more time so you can listen and see. There we go.
Right, we'll be dancing tonight.
So again, it's a super simple melody. It was very easy for me to pick out and find out where the notes go. So how I made this one is, let me just minimize this over here. So I'm using Logic X or Logic 10, however you want to say it. I'm using the retro synth. I found it was very, very fitting for this kind of song here. And again, this is, I guess, quantum piano, so that must have meant that I went ahead and chose a preset, probably in keyboards. There we go, quantum piano. And I remember doing a lot of tweaking to get the sound exactly how I wanted it. So this is mostly, most of the time how I work is I'll go through, I'll find a preset that sounds pretty close to what I'm going for, and then I'll go ahead and I'll tweak the parameters from there. So I think it was a lot in the filter envelope and the amp envelope in the attack and decay times to get that sounding how I wanted it to sound. So if I solo that, once again, it's really, let's leave this on solo so I don't forget to, okay, so now I can solo this. So if I go ahead and play here, I'm just going to quickly adjust the attack times, and you can see how that will affect the sound. Because there's a bit of an attack, like it's not sharp right away, there's like a bit of a whoop, whoop. So let's go ahead and play that. Okay, that was cycled over there. Now I'm going to play it. So you can see that if there's no filter envelope, like it's really plucky kind of. And that's not what it's doing. There's like a bit of an attack to that. So yeah, it's just pretty much listening to it over and over and over again and just fine-tuning it and just having it sound exactly how I wanted it to. So now as far as processing goes, a simple high-pass filter, I guess with 1 dB of boost, just really hardly doing anything. But yeah, mainly it's a high-pass filter to filter out the lows. Next, okay, so this is interesting. When you're listening to the song and you go ahead and you go back to your keyboard and you try and play it, you'll notice that it's off a bit, and that's because I think the entire track is tuned down like half a semitone or a quarter of a semitone or something weird. I still don't think I went low enough or whatever it was here, but as we can see that even on the bass itself, I think before I went ahead and did any processing, I changed the fine tuning, which will be the cents, and I put those either up or down. You can see on this one it's about 24 cents, because if you take this, or I guess if I take it off, then the synth was either slightly too high or low, depending on where I placed it in the piano roll. So if we listen to that, and now we put it back on. Okay, so that's raising it by 24 cents. And we take it off, it'll be a little bit lower. So it's really tough to hear, but I noticed that when I was trying to play the part on my MIDI keyboard, it just wasn't sounding right. And then I realized, you know what, he's tuned everything down a bit. So yeah, that was kind of interesting because it took me a while to figure that out, of like why couldn't I get it to sound like it. And then, okay, so after that we have an envelope, or the enveloper, I don't know how the heck you say it. And we can see we've got a bit of gain on the attack portion and like minus 10% on the tail, which is honestly hard, like you're not even really going to notice that. But it looks like after I got the attack portion of the synth taken care of, I wanted to add a bit more attack back to the overall sound. So that's why I'm using the enveloper here. And last but not least, there is a bit of distortion with the growl setting, just to sort of thicken or fatten up the sound a bit. And of course, just play around with that, you'll get it to taste, or just, yeah. And then of course a bus, and I've got some reverb on here as well via a send. So that's the synth. And then, as I said, I went ahead and I bounced this whole track because I found that when I tried to render the track out and the AU pitch was on here, and again, I'll quickly show you where you can do this. It's audio units, Apple, and then AU pitch, is that there was a lot of weird artifacts and stuff that made its way into it. So I figured that if I bounced the synth by itself as an audio track, then I wouldn't have any of those issues. So once I processed it, I did a little bit more processing. It looks like I did another high pass on here because, which was not necessary at all now that I look at this, but I must have forgot that I already high passed it. Again, we're doing a little bit of compression on here. Let's see how much we're taking off. Okay, so about 2.5 tops, but mostly we're just kissing it, as they say. We're just taking off a little bit. And then I put a tremolo on here because I sort of wanted that wavery left and right effect, so we can see that. So I'll play it and I'll turn off and on. You can hear it. So it's just adding a little bit more movement to it, and that's basically it. So finally, moving on to the vocals now. We're almost done, and again, I apologize if this is taking long. It's probably really long at this point, but anyway, yeah. So the vocals, okay. So how did I process these? I am currently enrolled in an audio engineering program, and I had access to the studio. And it's just, obviously, it's just great sounding, acoustically treated room, and it just sounds amazing. And that's where I set up the microphone, and that's where I recorded the vocals. And from there, once I did like tons and tons of takes, because I can't sing at all, it takes me a lot of takes to get it right. So we can see that what I have here is I've layered quite a bit. So for every section, there's a layer. I've layered 3. So for the first part, if you do it right, I have 3 layers of that, and then for the next part, let it go all night, there's 3 layers of that, etc., etc. So when I first did the takes of every section, I must have had like 10 to 15 takes, a lot of takes that I was sorting through to get the perfect sounding one, right? So once I had all those picked out and then I brought those into Logic afterwards, I did some tuning with Melodyne, which I don't actually have. I don't own Melodyne, but the school does. So I was working on that through Pro Tools, and I was tuning my vocals. So once I tuned them, then I bounced them, and then I brought those audio files back into Logic. So it was a bit of a process, but it was obviously worth it because most music these days containing vocals, in like almost without a doubt in all cases, they're going to be tuned. That's just that's just how music has evolved, unless you're like a great singer and you're going for that like just rough, raw effect. Anyways, I can't do that because I suck at singing. So, moving on. Yeah, so we've got 3 layers of every one, and I'll play one of them at a time so you can see why. Why do we layer them? Well, if we just have one of them, it's obviously not going to be as loud. So that's one reason. So here's the first one, and of course this has been tuned. If you do it right. Here's the second one. If you do it right. And here's the third one. If you do it right. So you can see that they're all sort of, they're not obviously exactly the same. And although I tuned them, I didn't tune them exactly perfectly. Like there's still a little bit of variance in them. And what happens is when you add all those together, it gives you this much thicker, richer sound overall. So let me just play 1, then I'll play 3 so it's easier for you to hear. If you do it right. If you do it right. So now you have this thick, full-bodied sound, and that's the reason why we layer vocals. So if you're not layering your vocals, you should start layering them. All right, and these, of course, are obviously all sent to a bus. But before it, I guess, yeah, okay, let's talk about the bus. So they're all sent to the vocal bus, and again, they all have a bit of compression on them. And might I say that before I did bus compression, I did some compression to the individual tracks, which you can't see here because these are obviously bounced versions. So this track here has already been compressed, and then these 3 layers have all been sent to a vocal bus, which are then being compressed a little bit more. Like they're not being smashed, but you know, little by or bit by bit, I guess they're being more and more compressed. And that's why I prefer to work rather than to just use one compressor for the whole thing and work in that compressor really hard. I find you're going to get better results if you do sort of a little bit at a time and use bus compression afterwards. Forgot to breathe there. So, right, so after the compression on that bus, we've got a bit of EQ, which looks like it's hardly doing anything, maybe just taking off a very tiny bit of the low end. And then I've got the Puig-Tech or Pultec EQ, as I've heard other people say. It's a fantastic EQ by Waves in the Jack Joseph Puig or Puig collection. I highly recommend this plugin. It sounds amazing. You can push it. Like if you boost it really high and you push it hard, you're not really going to get those. I find that you won't really get those undesirable artifacts that you would normally get in, say, if you push the regular channel EQ too hard. So that's why I like using this one here. So yeah, as we can see at about 5K with a bandwidth of about 4, which is I guess leaning towards more sharp than a broad bell curve, and we're doing it about 4.5 boost at about 5K, just to sort of brighten the overall sound up. Yeah, and then on the individual tracks themselves, we can see that they, now if you're looking over here, you can see the EQ change. So it looks like every track needed to be EQ'd slightly, just a bit. So you can see that in some of them I'm taking out some of the low end, where some of those muddy frequencies might be hiding, you know, things like that. So using my ears just to clean up each track, just to get it how I want it to sound overall, right? Because some of these, there was what's called the proximity effect. So if I sang too close to the mic, like if I move closer like I am right now, you can see that there's a increase in bass frequencies, and then when you move back, you lose those bass frequencies. So you know, you have to EQ each track to, I guess, just take care of what's wrong with it. So anyway, moving on. It's pretty much the same process for every vocal take. They're all layered, and I all had to pick through tons and tons of takes.
Let it go all night.
Just play the rest of it here.
Shadows on you, break out into the light. If you do it right, let it go all night. Shadows on you, break out into the light.
So that covers that vocal 1, and the next, as we can see up here by the marker that I have, is vocal part 2. There's only two parts really, so it's really, again, it's a super simple song, but Daft Punk, they make it sound amazing. So this next part here, it's the same process. I sang it over and over again. I took the best takes. I compressed each one of those. I ran them through Melodyne. I exported them, brought them into Logic again. They've all got their own EQ. This one apparently has no EQ on it. Probably didn't need it, or I just forgot. And then they're all being sent again to that vocal bus, being compressed a little bit more. With a bit of EQ on there. This one's doing nothing. It's just there, I guess, just in case. I guess it didn't need it, right? And then, of course, the Puig-Tech EQ again with the boost, about 2.5 at 4K for these ones here. And there's 2 parts to this. There's a high part and there's a low part. Or I guess there's one part and there's the harmony to it. So let's play it all together, and I'll open the compressor just to show it's working.
You lose your way tonight. That's how you know the magic's right.
So again, we're not smashing it by any means. We're just taking off a couple of dB just to get them all sounding nice and happy and gel them together. Yeah, so the first part here, Again, I don't really there's no notes or anything that I can show here. I was using my ears, and I had my phone with me, and I was playing the track, and then I'd be like, okay, this is how it sounds. Then I'd go to the microphone, I'd get my friend to hit record, he'd record me, and then, yeah, I sang it section by section. So this is the high part, I believe. Yeah, high. So let's just have a listen.
If you lose your way tonight, that's how you know the magic's right.
And again, if we play them one by one, these are layered to add thickness, and I think I sang one of them a little different then, but let's just have a listen.
If you lose your way tonight. If you lose your way tonight.
You can see that last one, that night sounded a little weird, a little bit over processed there. But when you layer them all together, it's not really as noticeable.
If you lose your way tonight.
Then all together.
If you lose your way tonight.
All right, and then we have the lower harmony part.
If you lose your way tonight, that's how you know the magic's right.
And one thing, if I haven't mentioned it yet, that's very important, which I did mention in the vocoder tutorial. And once again, I'll put a link in the description, and there was the annotation earlier, whatever. Is that you have to get your vocals, if you're layering, in close proximity, or not. Sorry, that's the wrong word. You have to get all your vocal takes in time with each other, right? So because when you sing it and you're layering multiple parts, if there's your plosives, which are your P's, your T's, and your S's, those like really sharp sounds, if those parts of the words aren't lining up, and then you start layering your vocals, they're going to be hitting it, not always the same time, and they're going to be sounding really messy overall. So you can't see it here, but this is flex pitch that's right here. But and again, these have already been tuned, like I said, and they've been flexed, or they've been time stretched, or whatever. So every single word that I sang, I either adjusted slightly behind or slightly forward to get them all perfectly in time with one another. And that's how you end up getting that really nice, crisp sound that's always in time. So that's just an important thing to mention. So yeah, so now once again, if I play both of these at the same time, then you have your harmony.
If you lose your way tonight, that's how you know the magic's right.
Right, so I think that about covers everything. Obviously, if you skipped ahead, I didn't cover the vocoder in this one because I did a separate tutorial for the vocoder because there was quite a lot to talk about. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that I've covered the percussion, I covered the bass, I covered the synth part, I covered both my vocals and how I process them, and yeah. What else can I say, guys? That's how I made this. That's how I made this cover / remake, and overall, it was a great experience. I learned a lot in the process. It was really fun because I love Daft Punk, and it was great to cover one of their tracks. And yeah, I don't often work with vocals if you've listened to a lot of my music, because I normally make like electronic ambient stuff, but yeah, this was a fun project. I improved my production skills, I think, through the process, and I hope to do more of these in the future. So this ramble has finally come to an end. If you guys have stuck around this long, then my gosh, give yourself a pat on the back, because that is amazing. I totally don't think I could sit through this in one take. I'd have to get a break and get some chocolate milk or something. But yeah, that's it, I guess. That's my tutorial on how I made the Daft Punk Doing It Right song / remake. And yeah, hopefully this was helpful. If it was, maybe I'll do another one, and hopefully I'll be a lot better at it, and it'll go a lot quicker and smoother and whatnot. So yeah, thanks a lot for sticking around, guys. If you have any questions or comments or feedback, of course, you know how to get a hold of me. And yeah, thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you next time.